and move on to examples of state wildfire prevention mitigation programs. And again, when we first started looking at doing this webinar, we really wanted to provide some examples of states and the type of programs that they're working on. And we have 3 states that you're going to be hearing from now. We're hearing from Patrick Mahoney, who's the wildfire mitigation specialist with the Florida Forest Service, Karen Stafford, who's the regional wildland urban interface coordinator with the Texas Forest Service, and also Mark Wiles, who's the wildfire mitigation specialist for the Georgia Forestry Commission. So not sure who's going to go first here, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Okay, draw straws here. We've got some of our folks here in at the location where we're doing this. So,
Brett, I think you're still sharing your screen.
Oh, oops. Yeah, there you go. Sorry about that.
Okay. Now you should be able to share.
Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Mahoney, Florida Forest Service Wildfire Mitigation Specialist, and we've been part of a really good program with the prevention throughout Florida and throughout the U.S., and we've had some great success on some of the places that we've been. So let's go ahead and start. We went to Alabama a couple years ago, and these are some pros and cons. Having your point of contact on the team is a really, really hard thing to do because they're authorizing some of your stuff, but they're also wanting to be part of the team. And so there's some pressure there. This happened to us in Alabama, and then they gave us a local U.S. Forest Service personnel to be on the team that could only work certain times and certain days because of travel and some other things. So this became an issue within the team. Kind of hurt the morale a little bit because of the coming and going and just not the constant team atmosphere. But we also found out that they had a UPS account. So we placed an order and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of over $10,000. And then with shipping. Well, when we found out that they had that UPS account, the price came down to $400 or so because the shipping, all that was waived and they got a lot better deal. So, you know, when you're out and about, always ask the forest if you're placing large orders, if they have a UPS account, and go ahead and take advantage of that because now you're able to spend more money to get more stuff in and not have to worry about the large amount of shipping that you're having to cover. And then we covered the entire state of Alabama with a very small team. I think we had like 5, maybe 6. And you don't realize how big Alabama is until you have to cover the whole forest. There was a couple times that they asked us to do things that was out of our scope, and so we had to kind of nix that. But we covered all the forest, and we had a lot of things set up. We had a peanut festival. We did a lot of festivals. Did not realize how many festivals were in Alabama, but we did a lot of festivals. And it was just really hard to do, but we did it, and it was a success. We also went over to the Air Force Base and did a program over there at one of their daycares, and the kids loved it. And having someone from the military on your team that knows how to work that, it works out really well. Colorado, when we got there, there's no delegation of authority for several days. They really didn't want us to get one. And then we started being back and forth about what they wanted us to do. And we pretty much shut down until they got us a DOA in place. And again, at this location, they thought that we were going to do patrol and hand out violations. And we told them very quickly that that's not who we are. That's not what we do. So a lot of times you roll into a forest and they really don't have a good idea of what prevention team really is, what we do. So we educated them very quickly on that. First couple days, we had no internet. We had no office supplies. We met down in the basement of the building. We got in July 2nd, and that was on a Thursday, and they all took off. And so we were by ourselves and not having anything. We made it work. They gave us their vehicles to use because they wanted us to have their vehicles out there so people could see. And this was right in the midst of COVID. I believe we were the first prevention team boots on the ground for this year. And so we kind of set up some of the protocol. We worked very closely with Washington and others to make sure that our people were safe. We did temperatures in the morning, in the afternoons. We separated, we followed all the protocols, and it was really good. Now, one of the trucks that they gave us ran on some special type of fuel, and there was only one fuel station within, I don't know, 300-400 miles. So that vehicle stayed close in town, and we did archery events. We did several other things. And again, coming in the day before 4th of July, that was tough. And again, the misunderstanding of what we do. In the Klamath, no local hotels, no safe hotels. We ended up staying in Oregon and driving back and forth because the hotel that was located here was just not safe. I was not wanting to put the team into position, and so we left. COVID was a real big issue. Everywhere we went, PSC wanted us to make sure that, you know, we had masks and stuff. Kind of turned down some opportunities because of the COVID thing. But we went to the racetrack. They had nightly races over there. And the big hit was the chain guards. Everybody wanted the chain guards. And we heard so many stories from those folks about, oh, I saw this, or I did this. So, you know, look at your audience for those things. Great thing is they had an established route. They had 3 different routes, and we split everybody up. So nobody did the same route every day. And that was a huge thing, a big benefit because of the established routes. When we got there, they asked about Hmong, and we were able to find someone to help translate that. And that will be one of the breakout sessions. And then our safety concerns with COVID and with driving. And we make sure now when we go, we request trucks or SUVs. I think we ended up putting 2 cars out of commission on this trip for a brief time because of the road. They just couldn't handle the mountain roads. So from this point on, we just asked for trucks or SUVs. Lake Tahoe, again, misunderstanding what prevention team was. This POC, he was awesome to work with. This was a really good trip, had a lot of success. Because this forest is kind of broken apart, there's a lot of confusion on ownership of the campgrounds. which one's state, federal, private. And so we ended up doing a video. They asked us if we could do a video, and one of the team members put together a great video, great product, and the force loved it. And then the local community support, as soon as we rolled in, one of the newspapers jumped on and very supportive, good articles. We attended a fundraiser for local fire department, was able to talk to a lot of folks, but the community support was amazing here. Texas, again, having local forestry personnel on your team. This one paid off. The Texas forest personnel that we had, she was absolutely amazing, very helpful, and would take her anytime. We had two teams that came in back to back, and the first team, as you see, drove over 10,000 miles. We covered a lot of area. We covered several counties. We were able to get the state into the Texas Rangers ball game. We had set up for a race, the NASCAR race that was going to be there. Also got them in some minor league games as well. Team 2 was able to do that. And so this was a really great time. Again, bilingual. Again, this will be discussed in a breakout, but it really paid off to have Nacho with us in several ways. In River Ranch, this is a local Florida issue. Sent a prevention team in there and had a lot of success there, but also a lot of challenges. A lot of the land that's in there, a lot of the ownership is out of area. And so there's some animosity between those that live there and those that just come up for the weekend. Lakeland Districts had several fires in this area. They did a local prevention team in there, passed out a lot of information, which I've got Todd sitting next to me. Do you have anything to add?
Well, the size of River Ranch, this was one of the few times that we've activated a local prevention team in Florida. And we were coming right out of COVID. So of course we had to kind of be careful on those precautions. But for basically the first almost 3 months of 2021, there were 13 fires inside River Ranch, 2 unknown, 9 incendiary. So we recognized that there was a problem. The problem was getting worse. So we knew we had to start something. Got with Andy Neesmith out of the state office, got some funding, started an iHeartRadio campaign. With that campaign in 2021, we were able to reach 361,000 people. And the program affected 11 counties and 6 of our forestry districts. We attended a lot of different meetings, handed out a lot of information. Fast forward to the same time period in 2022, and we had 13 fires in the same time period. So we again did the same prevention program with iHeartRadio. We were able to reach 569,000 people. And with that, we were actually able to see about a 70% reduction of incendiary fires from the 21 to 22 season. So it was very successful. Here's a couple of pictures of what kind of the terrain is in River Ranch. It's a bunch of hunting camps. They're not permanent residencies. So a lot of absentee property owners with a lot of large mobile homes, a lot of expensive side-by-sides, 4-wheelers, just a lot of money sitting around. And very fire prone. There's a lot of fire bugs down there that like to play around with fire, and it keeps us very busy. But when we started doing the prevention campaigns, we started to see about a 70% reduction in the incendiary fires.
And I'm sorry, that's Todd Chandler. He's also the mitigation specialist for the Lakeland District, Florida Forest Service. All right, in Florida, our authorized prescribed fire 21 to 22, through that year, you see that we did over 2 million acres of authorized burns, not us, but this is what we've authorized, and 185,000 plus piles. Our new campaign is Be Wildfire Ready, and if you want more information, the website's there. This is being pushed throughout the whole state, and it's gaining a lot of traction. And we'll be using this on some future campaigns that's coming up as well. Mitigation, got $94 million for mitigation throughout the state. So far, we've treated over 26, almost 27,000 acres have been treated, and almost 2,900 structures protected. And with that, I will turn it over to Texas for Karen.
Karen, you're muted.
Hey, Karen, we aren't able to hear you very well.
Okay, I deeply apologize to our audience. Nobody reminded me right here in front of me that I was muted, so I will start all over.
She's back again.
So anyway, I'm very pleased to be here from the state of Texas and to be able to share with you the direction that fire prevention is taking right now in our great state. So I'm going to take us all the way back to COVID-19 just a few years ago. And what we've learned is that following all major catastrophic events, whether it be wars, terrorism, or pandemics, we develop a new sense of normal. And we learn to do new things, and our whole world becomes different. And that's what COVID-19 did for us, especially in fire prevention and education and outreach. It pushed us to that new normal with the virtual learning and virtual interactions. With these virtual learning environments, we've learned more about how to harness technology, how to supplement our exercises, our experiences, really dive into digital communication interactions. And with all of this living in a virtual world and working in a virtual world, we start to see more cost savings, a more expanded worldview, bigger ideas of how to do things. We deepened our community relationships, and we're also able to receive that immediate feedback on the learning. And from that, we can improve our flexibility, increased inclusivity, and just continue to build upon that. But following, well, not following, but I guess getting later into 2020, when we started getting to November, December, we started seeing the indications shifting towards a La Nina pattern. And what that means for us in Texas is severe wildfire conditions and the potential for a Southern Plains wildfire outbreak. And if you've ever been in Texas during one of these times, you know what I'm talking about. These lead to the most catastrophic wildfire conditions that we've seen historically in our state. And so then leading into January and April, we were trying to rack our brains to figure out how we are going to communicate all of this with the public, still living in a COVID environment with limited face-to-face interaction. We couldn't go into the schools. We couldn't really go into a lot of businesses still. So how are we going to get these messages out to the public? And so this is kind of an overview and the high points of what we did. So very early on in 2021, we developed two basic graphics, our wildfire aware and wildfire alert, borrowing on the premonition of tornado watches and tornado warnings. being that the wildfire where we have the conditions ready, what are some things that you can start doing during those times? Then our wildfire alert, we would issue during times when we saw Southern Wildfire Plains outbreak coming, or if the conditions were highly potential for a Southern Plains wildfire outbreak. That's when we would issue the wildfire alerts. And then we started incorporating these onto all of our graphics that we would go across on social media and on billboard campaigns and everything. So the public became more in tune with our messaging. They became a lot more familiar to the public. This is also the time when we launched our digital billboards. So we concentrated on areas of the Southern Plains wildfire outbreak, which is really in our Texas Panhandle, kind of that Northwest Texas area over there. And the great thing about the digital billboards, so we leased 10 of them. We put them within the communities in areas where there's traffic intersections. So where traffic is going to be either slowed or stopped, or in shopping centers. So you have more of a captive audience, and people are able to really take in the messaging you're putting on these digital billboards. But the other great thing about this is that messaging can be changed at the flip of a switch. So if we're expecting a really bad day or a really bad couple days to come, we can instantly change that digital billboard message in those communities. And we can even specify which communities we want it to show up in. If we want it to just be in Amarillo and Lubbock areas, or if we just need to be in Amarillo or Midland or Abilene or whatever, we can really, really become specific. And like I said, we can change that at the flip of a switch. So those have, we are still continuing with that contract, and we are still using those to this day. We created a toolkit for all of our field staff. So we uploaded the toolkit with talking points, videos, social media graphics, so they can just pull that offline. They can work with their local cooperators, their local media staff, and then get them, encourage those local media outlets to share those graphics on their own social media. So that's still being used now. And then the gas pump videos. So when you're sitting there pumping your gas and you have these cool little video segments playing. So we used that, and we already had videos made from the previous couple of years that were professionally done. So this was a great way for us to utilize those videos. And I'll drop a link of what video we used in the chat in a minute, because it's really good. Y'all need to see this. But then we weren't the only ones doing prevention efforts during this time. The Ad Council and the CFFP actually reached out to us and said, hey, we really want to help bolster your prevention activities. We have this kind of a budget. But instead of them just going widespread across the whole state, they actually reached out to us and gave us the opportunity to have the input in where they spent those dollars and how they spent them. So we had, all of our funds and our outreach activities going on, as well as the Ad Council coming in to help us. And that truly helped ramp up our fire prevention efforts, going above and beyond what we would normally be able to do with traditional field work. And so while the field staff were still actively fulfilling their prevention activities, doing the trap lining as much as they could, again, in a COVID environment, but then working with their local cooperators and sharing their message through local media outlets. So having the Ad Council step in and offer to help us, like I said, it just really pushed us above and beyond what we would normally be able to do. And so going into later that year, we started trying to think about, gosh, how can we prove that what we're doing is working? And that's exactly what Fred just said in his previous presentation is, it's really hard to prove that prevention works. How do you prove what doesn't happen? So we have a very brilliant staff in our agency, in our predictive services department. And this is something that they actually came up with, this new program. And it was their effort of trying to answer that age-old question of, does fire prevention really work? And so I'm going to do my best to explain what is happening here. I am absolutely not the brains behind this. But what you're seeing in front of you in this map is the coloration is the interpolation based on the deviation from the expected number of fires. So that what that means is the more green and blue, the less fires we had than what was expected. So that's good. That's what we want to see. But the more red and yellow that you see on this map means we had more fires than we expected. And so that was the bad part. Luckily, we only saw that little bit down there in the very southern tip, and it's just a tiny area up in the Panhandle. And so for this, we looked at the deviation based on the days where the ERC and the BI were above the 75th percentile. We focused on the months of March and April because those are typically the prime months for our Southern Plains wildfire outbreaks and our spring fire season months. And when you think about March and April, those are also the months when people are really getting outdoors in their yards. They're cleaning up after the ice and snowstorms. They're out there in their garden beds planting and burning. So that's the time of year you really see a huge increase in things like the debris burning in Texas. And so that's why we focus on those 2 months. And so what you see here, the days listed along the x-axis, those dates there, are each of the days that were identified as being significant for wildfires. So those are the days that we expected to see significant wildfires in this Panhandle branch. The top line is what we expected, and the bottom line in the red is what was actually observed. And so you can see that the observed fires were consistently fewer than what was expected on those days. And so in this Panhandle branch during this time, we expected to have 31 fires, and we actually only observed 10 fires during these 2 months. So that being a reduction of 21 fires and 68% reduction. And here we see it again. April 21 was compared with the past Aprils for comparable weather and fuel conditions. We found that this pattern was also similar to 2010, 2015, and 2016. And the maps that you see here between 2010 and 2021, again, looking at what was expected for each of these years and comparing it to what was observed, you can see that this year, in particular in 21, we had fires. This means that we had a higher instance of days we should have had fires, but we simply didn't. And when you keep in mind that each of these years had similar weather, the fuels, the biggest difference was that we had the above and beyond efforts of fire prevention, then it becomes logical to draw that conclusion that the fire prevention is working. And so we didn't want to just haphazardly do this on a brand new program that we created with our own agency. We used WIPSAPs as a way to check ourselves, but also, myself and another coworker had just been through the WIPSAPs training. So we used this as an opportunity for us to test our skills and to really put this to the work and show the rest of our agency the value of this program and the value of our prevention efforts. I won't go into all the details about WIPSAPs since Fred already covered that. And so for our particular analysis on the WIPSAPs, we kept it limited again to our SPWO range, including our prevention efforts. Actually, we branched it out over 6 months for this particular assessment. We pulled our risk assessment data from our existing CWPPs in this area, our local knowledge, and from Google Earth, which we had been told was acceptable to use in our training. So we feel very confident in the inputs that we used in this program. And so based on our fire prevention activities and accomplishments, the WIPSAPs prevention effectiveness summary was telling us that we actually prevented 954 fires within this SPWO range for this time frame. And that led to a little over $300,000 reduced suppression costs. And so some other things that we're started doing in 2021, and we're still continuing now, is Survey 123. And this has been a game changer for us. We use this in our everyday reporting efforts in our agency, but then we have a separate prevention activities survey that we can go out and we can log our trap lines, we can log all of our drop points, we can log events and activities that we do, all related to fire prevention, especially during fire seasons. And now we actually have the ability to allow outside fire prevention teams to use this program, which makes it really nice because on my end, as the state fire prevention coordinator, I have this dashboard that you see in front of you. And so it tells me exactly the number of contacts being made, the regions that we're hitting, the activities that are being completed. And so then that allows us to better plan where we're going to go next. It reduces our duplication of efforts. And it makes it really nice to be able to make reports on the fly when leadership goes to asking, what exactly is your fire prevention team doing? I can go to this dashboard, I can quickly run the reports, and I can show our agency leadership everything that our fire prevention teams are doing in the field. And then remember that cost savings that I mentioned in the very beginning, that was all linked back to COVID. So during that 2020, 2021 timeframe, we just simply couldn't go out and do the outreach and the education like we normally traditionally have been able to do. And so what that did was actually led to a huge cost savings to us in our budget. So much so that meant I was actually able to finally purchase a Smokey Bear Robotronic truck. And then along with the Smokey Bear Robotronic truck, we also purchased several of the air suits that you also see in this other picture. And these two things alone have been a game changer for us in our agency. It takes off the pressure from using the traditional smoky suits at all events. We all know how hot those suits are. So this air suit is greatly cooler. So it's really nice for those outdoor events, especially in the summer in Texas. And so he's 8 foot tall though, so you can't really use him inside, but he's, like I said, he's great for those outdoor events. And then Robo Smokey, I mean, he's just as cool as they come. Lights, sirens, he has an MP3 player, so he plays music. You have a headset so you can actually talk and be the voice of Smokey, and his mouth moves, the eyes move, his head turns. There's a water squirter on the front of the truck so you can squirt the crowds and the kids, and they love it. We've used this at a lot of large outdoor events now. We've had him in parades. We've even put him in some video PSAs that I hope to share with you later. And then just, continue to move forward. We are still using our traditional methods because and there's so much importance on those traditional methods of just going out and having that face-to-face interaction with people, the boots on the ground. We're continuing our digital outreach, expanding into more social media opportunities, more video opportunities, making more focused, accessible messaging. Everything we do now, we're trying as much as possible to translate it into Spanish so we can reach even more audiences that way. But continuing to stay focused on our lessons learned, utilizing our successes, but also not being afraid to admit our weaknesses and learning from them, because that ultimately is going to be the only way that we continue to grow and move forward with prevention. So I'll wrap that up and we can go on to the next one.
Okay, thanks, Karen. And next up, we have Mark Wiles, the Georgia Forestry Commission.
Thanks, Robin. Can you see my screen?
Sure can.
Okay. I'm Mark Wiles. I'm the Wildfire Mitigation Specialist for the Georgia Forestry Commission. I actually retired 10 years ago and was hired to come back part-time to help work in the wildfire mitigation department and the prevention department. Georgia is a huge state. We have 37 million acres of land, and 24.6 million acres of that is forest land. And of this 24.6 million acres, 24.1 acres of timberland is available for commercial use. We actually produce more pulp than any other place in the world for the production of paper. So forestry for us is huge. And certainly the issue of forest fires, we have to deal with that quite often. So it's important for us to prevent as many fires as we possibly can and to try to mitigate our fuel issues throughout the state. And, with an ever expanding urban population from Atlanta to Augusta, we certainly are working hard to try and mitigate as many of those issues that we can. The key here is working with private property owners because 55% of our land in the state of Georgia belongs to private citizens. So we work with them through our prevention program and also through our mitigation program to help reduce the number of wildfires and actually mitigate those fuel accumulations through this massive forest land that we have throughout the state. Back in the spring, we launched a fire prevention team into South Georgia. We actually worked closely with Florida Forest Service to take a look at some of the issues of fuel accumulations from Hurricane Michael. Now, I know that was several years back, but right now that fuel is just beginning to be primed to be burned. And I think Florida actually had a pretty good sized fire just before we launched this team in some of that excessive fuel areas that were generated by Hurricane Michael. So we started the campaign. We come up with this before wildfires start, Be Georgia Smart, and we kind of run with that whole theme. And I guess you all may know where the whole SMART thing is coming from because Kirby Smart is our college football coach, and we actually worked with him to create a PSA. And let me see if I can get that to play for you. We knew that it would be super popular across the state. Can you guys see that? Robin, can you see this video?
Not yet. Not yet.
I'm Coach Kirby Smart here in Athens. We all know.
How about that? Is it showing up?
No,
No? Okay.
it's still running. It sounds like it's running in the background.
Okay.
Just
All
may
right.
want to share a different screen. You can't go back to share.
Give me just a
You may
second
have to
here.
close your PowerPoint.
All right. Is he showing up there? You see him now?
No, no.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's just go back to the PowerPoint.
If you want to put the video in the chat, people can watch it
Okay.
a little bit later. That'll work.
All right. Sounds good. Give me just a sec here. But Kirby was a hit. Y'all do know we were national champs this past year, so he was gracious enough to do that for us, and it worked out really good. Can you see my PowerPoint now?
No, you need to go back and select that out of the tray.
Okay. How about that?
I was still seeing your just your screen.
All right, we'll stop sharing. Try to share again.
Okay, now you're back.
There we are. All right.
Yeah, you're
So
in
not
presenter
only
mode.
did we, huh?
You're in presenter mode, so just go.
Okay.
There you go.
It worked.
Yeah, now you're back.
So not only did we work with Kirby, but we also spent a lot of time with local media sources, television, radio. We worked with iHeartMedia on a campaign across the state, and we had a lot of positive feedback. And we are currently working to mitigate a lot of the issues that Hurricane Michael caused in South Georgia. Here in the state of Georgia, you know, fire prevention and education programs are big. We had over 500 fire prevention and education programs across the state. Smokey is always a hit. We kind of use him as the bait to draw people in. And so once we got Smokey on board, usually people are anxious and ready to listen to what we have to say regarding fire prevention. We did have a couple of fire prevention campaigns back when it got so dry, talking a lot about fireworks and the issues with fireworks when you have them out close to forested areas. So that was a hit. And we used a lot of television outreach as well. Social media was also a big part of those campaigns. Community wildfire protection plans, we continue to work on those and update those across the state, working with community leaders, fire departments, local county governments. We have 143 countywide CWPPs that were created in Georgia, and those are constantly being updated throughout the state. And a lot of our counties use them. They follow them closely, and we have grant funds that we can provide for these communities to help mitigate some of the risk that they have within their communities. The Georgia FireWise program, we currently have 122 FireWise communities in Georgia. These communities are supported by the Georgia FireWise Hazard Mitigation Grant, which provides them up to $5,000 a year to do mitigation work. And currently we're working with these coastal island communities along Georgia's coast. Most of them don't have fire departments or even any sort of real infrastructure, fire hydrants to be able to protect the homes. What you see here on the screen is Barber Island, which is one of the islands just off the coast of Georgia. There are probably about 40 homes there. They frequently have wildfires. and they have absolutely no protection whatsoever. So we have introduced them to Firewise. They're super excited about using the Firewise techniques to protect their communities. We're also looking at St. Catherine's Island, which is a coastal community, Georgia, in Georgia, and they actually had a 2,000-acre wildfire last year on that island. So we're working with them to adopt some of the Firewise principles to protect the structures on that island. Coming up next month, we'll be working with Sapelo Island, which is another one of our barrier islands, to incorporate them into the Firewise program. And we look forward to working with them. There's a lot of risk out there. And for those of you who live in Florida and South Georgia, you know what Southern rough is like. It is highly flammable and very difficult to control fire in. So it's important that these communities exercise the Firewise program to have a safer community for sure. Fire adapted communities, roughly 10 years ago, Frank Riley, for those of you who know Frank, he's the executive director of the Chestatee Chattahoochee RC&D program. He was the pilot, one of 8 pilot community projects throughout the U.S. for fire adapted communities. And 10 years has passed. Since that time, that program has expanded to about 72 counties beyond North Georgia, up into North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. So we use this program a lot in northern Georgia to help promote fire prevention and Firewise and to educate people in those communities. Most of those are in the mountain communities on how to mitigate their fire risk. Of course, the Community Wildfire Defense Grant, everybody's talking about that these days. The Commission is actively promoting the Community Wildfire Defense Grant program. We have one county that was actually awarded funds this year, and we're looking forward to funding more mitigation projects in the future throughout Georgia, hopefully by using this program. So this past weekend, our Community Wildfire Defense Grant Coordinator, Anthony English, spent a lot of time with all the county commissioners throughout the state in Savannah at a meeting down there. So we look for a lot of interest to be generated from that meeting. Educational outreach, we've talked about fire mitigation and the importance of mitigation. One of the things that we do, we conduct a lot of learn and burn workshops throughout the state to educate property owners on how they can benefit from prescribed burning, as well as conducting their own prescribed burns, and by doing it safely. Georgia Forestry Commission is always available to help people do those prescribed burns to help reduce the amount of fuel out there and mitigate some of those fire issues. But by educating the public, I think we can go a long ways toward getting folks to embrace the whole idea of prescribed burning and helping to mitigate the fire risk throughout the state. For those people who want to take it a step further, we have the certified burn program here in the state. It's a 2-day prescribed burn certification class. You have to pass a test. You have to have 2 years of fire experience, and you have to be in charge of at least 5 prescribed fires before you can actually become a certified burner. We burn a lot here in Georgia. It's a very important tool in helping to manage these massive pine stands that we have here in the state. 24.1 million acres of commercially available timber, and this time of year, smoke is just always in the air because we're constantly burning throughout the state. And it looks like over the past several years, especially with wet conditions, it's kind of hard for us to meet the targets. But we're hoping that we can burn at least, we're burning about 1.44 million acres a year. We're hoping to increase that. I'm not sure we'll ever be able to reach that 4.5 million acre goal that we have. And that's based on a 3 to 4 year rotation on these pine stands. So we know that fire is one of the most economical tools for fire mitigation, fuel mitigation, and we really promote that in our state. And we hope on expanding the burn program throughout the state. Any questions?
You have any questions for Mark or any of our presenters from that section? You guys did a great job. You covered a lot of information. Okay. Thank you. Thanks to all three of you